Hello, I'm Jane Austen. I grew up in Hampshire, England, with my mother, father, sister, and 6 brothers. Much of my education I gained from my father and brothers. It was actually because of them that I decided to become a writer. At the time, my family was considered landed gentry, much like Elizabeth Bennet's. In fact, several of my own family relationships are portrayed in the novel Pride and Prejudice, namely the one between Elizabeth Bennet and her own father.
It is often said you were a Marxist before Marx. Why is this, and would you agree?
I have taken an interest in and described how much economic tensions have an influence over our actions as people. And in that regard, I suppose, yes, I'm very much a Marxist. However, I don't believe that economic tension should influence our lives, and I try to prove this through Elizabeth Bennet's character.
And what was the main economic aspect you were looking to discuss in Pride and Prejudice?
Well, obviously, marriage was one of the more important economic aspects, because it's so closely tied to the financial standing of a family and so vital towards the life of a woman.
How do you show that marriage is so important?
Well, I use marriage as one of the main catalysts for most of the events in the main plot. At first, Jane and Bingley's relationship is used to bring Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy together in their first meeting, and then slowly throughout the book, relationships like Miss Charlotte and Mr. Collins brings them together at the climax of the first half of the book. And then in the end, Lydia and Mr. Wickham characterize Darcy in the second half of the book and ultimately unite Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy in the second half of the novel.
And Jane, the social classes that you cover in your novels make up for such a small percentage of the actual population. Why is this? Doesn't it exclude the majority of your audience?
Through portraying the upper classes, it's much easier to address any and all of the problems that were relevant to any people during the time period. It also allows me to characterize the upper class in such a way that's appealing to both my audiences.
By both audiences, do you mean intended audience?
And by both audiences, I mean the general population. Lower and middle classes, and even upper classes, were able to relate to the strain of society in portraying the upper class. And they also get more of the enjoyment out of the humor in some of the characters like Mrs. Bennet and Mr. Collins, which makes the book just more enjoyable to read.